Yeah, so ideally, why wouldn't I be into a hip hop group known as Dalek? What could go wrong here? Oh, industrial hip hop? Oh, wow, an inspiration on Death Grips? Wow, I wish. Wow, I wish this album was more of an influence on Death Grips in a respect, and inspired Death Grips to release good music after 2012. Oh well. In any case, Dalek, I've never really explored their music prior to this year, and this Absence album, absolutely stellar. I think what's really interesting about this sort of genre fusion here between industrial music and hip hop is that it's kind of amazing that this fusion didn't occur earlier. If the fusion did occur earlier, it was during that abhorrent new metal thing, which anyone who wants to defend new metal can just go occupy a bed somewhere. They have no use participating in the wider society, frankly. Now, what the good thing about this album I think is it demonstrated a kind of a certain mainstream edginess. We needed to. Sometimes you need, like the old recording artists, the pop group. You needed to have these familiar parameters with which then you could guide an audience into more out there and experimental territory. You couldn't just. It's all well and good to be the self-titled This Heat album or Milk from Cheltenham. Actually, I want more of those albums, to be honest. I'll be real. Although, if we want to draw more people into those albums, let's say, let's use a silly term like the normies into this sort of music, you're gonna have to show them where you get to. It's easier for a modern audience or any audience to appreciate Picasso versus Pollock or Francis Bacon. You understand. The conclusion you might reach is, if you were familiar with more mainstream or friendly styles of hip hop, Dalek's Absence would be like, oh wow, this is brutal. This is this is realer and rawer than the stuff I normally listen to. But I normally like the stuff because I thought it was kind of tough and edgy and like it made other people feel like intimidated by me. Well, this is doubling down on that. Oh my goodness. It's like when you first get into punk rock via some silly 90s act, like, I don't know, Rancid weren't that silly, but like, NoFX or Blink-182. Anyone who enjoys Blink-182 can go occupy a bed and not participate in society, please. Same thing with Green Day, and there's lots of you. I mean, there's probably a lot less people participating in society once that is undertaken, but nevertheless, I'm willing to let that happen. And then they would get into even just something like the Sex Pistols, and they're like, oh wow, this is raw and edgy and just totally uncouth and disrespectful of traditions and expectations. And then you get into something like the more hardcore punk of America's Black Flag or Circle Jerks. Germs are brilliant. GI, Decline of Western Civilization, the first one, the good one. The next one is good. Well, I don't dislike Decline of Western Civilization too. I know Andy Kriskow loves that film a lot, but not because he likes the music in it, you understand. But, oh man, like, I just can't stand Paul Stanley and all those other jokers just, like, trying to tell me about, like, why what they do is great. It's just, I know it's a historical document, but I don't know, it's like watching a dictator talk to the corpses of the people they've killed. I don't know, man. Not for me. You should be into that hardcore punk stuff. You think it's abrasive and political and interesting, and then you get into This Heat, and you're like, oh wow, this is a really interesting political statement. This is even cooler. Yeah, I've got to plug This Heat again, because I can. Doesn't get much better than This Heat. Although if you want hip-hop inspired by This Heat, try Dalek's Absence. I was totally bowled over by it. The Anton Kriskow in the other room, he was hearing what I was listening to, and he was like, yeah, this is the kind of music I like. If that's an endorsement, check out that channel, by the way. Some of the best music you'll ever hear on YouTube. But who were Dalek? I'm not reading out Wikipedia today. I'm not reading out any Rate Your Music reviews either. Yeah, go in blind. Check it out. I think my descriptor is industrial hip-hop. You'll hear this and you'll go, yeah, this is if industrial hip-hop was good. Not that Death Grips isn't good, but you don't think of... depending on who you are, you may not think of Death Grips. You may not associate the term industrial hip-hop with Death Grips. You might just think of Death Grips as a popular act, and you haven't necessarily heard the term industrial hip-hop associated with it. If you hadn't heard the term industrial hip-hop before and you think, oh, that could be a catastrophe or that could be really interesting and kind of good, you'll hear Absence by Dalek, and likely as not you'll think, oh yeah, this is the kind of good variety. Neat. So, do check it out if you're so inclined. Thanks again, my good and dear friend.